Hello and welcome to another reading vlog. I haven't picked what I'm going to read next. I'll put a picture up here of what I decide. I have to check my library and see what's available, but I will touch base with you once I have read something. Good morning. So I have just finished reading Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and I'm giving this 4.5 stars. Olivia Atwater is an auto-buy author for me now. I've had a 5-star, 4.75 and 4.5 star read from her, so 3 for 3 pretty much. In this book, this is a cozy Regency fairy fantasy book. So you have the main protagonist, Dora, who at a young age had half of her soul stolen from her by a fairy who was promised by her mother that he would have her whole soul. She was saved by her cousin. And the consequence of only having half a soul is that her emotions are severely dulled. So she's just always self-composed and doesn't really feel any kind of depth of feeling, pretty much. So because of that, she's just very oblivious to social conventions and expectations. She doesn't react in the way a lady should react in certain circumstances, and she has to constantly remind herself that her behavior is odd and to try pretty much unmask. She's basically just masking and trying to fit into society. As a result, she's unmarried. They can't really pawn her off. Her aunt desperately wants to get rid of her as both of her parents have passed away and she's living with her cousin and her aunt. But the time has come for her cousin to marry and find a suitor, so they head into London. And whilst there, her cousin is trying to orchestrate a meeting with the country's magician, Lord Sorcier. He is a very fiery, passionate, uncouth, unconventional man who was not born into money. And whilst he is wild, I wish he was a little bit saucier. I kind of wish Lord Sorcier was a bit saucier. This is not a spicy book. It's very chaste. There are 2 very sweet kisses and that is it. So keep that in mind if you're looking for more of a romance. That's the only gripe that I had with this book. I kind of wish there was ooh la la in it, especially between the 2 characters. So naturally there is a slow burn romance. Most people do not like the Lord Sorcier. He says inappropriate things. He's not a gentleman. He's very adamant about that. And then when he comes across Dora, who is unflappable and unfazed and is able to give him back, there's a tete-a-tete there. Naturally, she piques his interest and they start to form a friendship. Because this book is also about uncovering a mystery. There's this sleeping plague that is affecting children and it seems to be magical in nature. So she lends a hand in that aspect and sort of starts to also just be more of herself instead of trying to act the way that others want her to act. There's obviously a fairy magical element that's also in play. I don't want to give away the plot or progression of the novel, but I really enjoyed it. It's a shorter novel, so it's got great pacing. I just had a really good time with it. I really enjoyed it. It is, like I said, more of a cozier, lower stakes kind of novel and more of a tender romance, very sweet. And yeah, I will be honestly picking up more of her books. When I've read too many books in a row that are maybe just not hitting for me, I can know that, oh, I'll pick up an Olivia Atwater and make sure I avoid the book slump. But I just really enjoyed it, and it's going to make me look more fondly at my little pair of embroidery scissors. So the next book that I'm going to read is The Siren. So this is a romance novel, and that's because I was obviously hoping for a little bit more flirtation and tension and deliciousness in Half a Soul, and it kind of left me with this unsatisfied hunger. So I'm hoping this book will satiate that for me. I don't even know what it's about. I haven't looked up the blurb. I'll be going out today, so I'll have a read and then fill you in on what it's actually about when I get back. The kids are off to their dads today, so I've got some me time. I'm going to go to the cafe and I'm actually just going to go for a little walk around, a little browse. I don't normally like browsing because I don't like buying things that I haven't planned to buy and I haven't researched. I'm not a spontaneous purchaser. It makes me feel very, I don't want to say frightened, but it scares me a bit. I don't like to buy things that I hadn't planned on So I tend to avoid just walking around into shops, but I thought I'd just explore the neighborhood that I'll be in that day just to see if there's any hidden gems around. I'll touch base with you guys when I've read some more of the Siren. Okay, so I am back. The cafe was very cute. I love the aesthetic. The food was okay. The coffee was great. The cappuccino was perfect. I would go back there again. I found some cute stores. One I definitely want to head back to. That Twitch's Emporium place looks so kooky and cute. I can't wait to go back when they actually open. Now the book. I know this is meant to be an erotica book, but it should be a comedy book because I was cackling my ass off. I was laughing out loud in this cafe so many times. So many times. It is just very funny. It's got a very dirty sense of humor, and I have a dirty sense of humor. So I was just laughing. You have the premise what I've gotten so far. I haven't read the blurb, but from what I've read from the book, you've got not a book editor. He's like, I think he's a literary agent. I'm not quite sure, something like that. And basically he's been told by his boss that they want to sign this erotic fiction writer and to go and persuade her to sign with them. And he's like, oh my God, are we really stooping so low to publish porn? And his boss is like, she'll be making us a ton of money. And then you can go and publish your 20 poetry books if you sign her. So he's going there begrudgingly. He has an English accent. And she is this little petite, dark-haired, foul, potty-mouthed, shameless flirt. And she doesn't give a shit, and she just goes after him immediately. Look, is she low-key probably sexually harassing him a little bit? Yeah, she probably is a bit, but I'm just going with it. And because he doesn't seem to be made uncomfortable, he's just annoyed. He's mildly annoyed at her coming onto him, pretty much. Or it's just not even coming onto him. She's just trying to rile him up. But I'm really enjoying it so far. It's just so funny. It's so funny. Like, nothing sexy's happened, but it's just making me laugh. And I'm happy to have a laugh. So far so good. Yeah, it's a crass and crude, yeah, but for some reason it's tickling my funny bone. So I will read the rest of that and let you know how that goes. Okay, so if you just watch my reaction, you would see that things took a turn. Things took a turn in this book. This is definitely a dark romance. I really should have read the blurb. I still haven't read the blurb. I'm really not a big blurb reader. This is what I would probably call dark romance. So with BDSM, I love certain aspects of BDSM, but there gets to be a point where I draw a line, and that's definitely on the sadism part. So the pain play, when it's taken to the extent that it's drawing blood and it's quite extreme, I am like, no. So I would check every trigger warning for this book. The elements that have really turned me off, besides the extreme pain play, is that the main FMC, she has that 19-year-old assistant, she keeps making sexual advances to them, and they are saying no, and that doesn't sit well with me whatsoever. So she's just way too sexual harassing now. I didn't mind when it was with the MMC. He's a grown man. He was interested in her. I didn't mind that she was hitting on him hardcore, but like, she's doing it to the 19-year-old. And then there's obviously, she's also a dominatrix. She's bi, so she's with men and women. But she's messed up, man, from this relationship with her ex, who brought her into the BDSM, groomed her because she was 16 when she met him, even though he didn't sleep with her until she was 20. Yeah, there is just abuse all in this book. And I'm halfway through and I'm at the point, I'm like, do I continue just to see maybe if it, I don't know, I want to say like gets better or does this in a healthier way? I don't think it is. I think this is just a dark romance, and dark romances, they contain dark stuff and I'm just not into it. Consent is very big for me. So anything that has ambiguous consent, I don't really like. Anything that kind of screams sexual abuse, I don't really like. So this is not doing it for me in that respect. The humor though, the bits when it's funny, I still like that. So I don't know. I've just got nothing else to read at the moment. I'd have to go to my library because I just checked online, and from my brief look, nothing's available right now. And I know I'd have to sit there for an hour to try and find an ebook that's available right now that I want to read, and I just can't be bothered. So I might continue on with this a little bit more, but if it veers into the point where I'm just like, no, can't do it, yeah, I'm going to put it down. So be warned with this book. It's definitely dark romance. It's with the BDSM, it's heavy on the sadism component, and yeah, you've got a very sort of aggressively sexual female who doesn't really care too much about other people's objections. Let's put it that way. I'm out. No. No. So yeah, for me, a hard line is an adult having sex with anybody who is under the age of 18. And yeah, this happens in this book. So no, that's statutory rape, my dudes. So I know it's fiction and it's not real, but yeah. No, this was way under 18. So I just want to vomit. So yep, no, sorry guys, not for me. And yeah, I'm just going to erase everything that I've just read from my mind and pick something else to read. I have started reading Jewel Box. So Jewel Box is a collection of whimsical short stories that kind of center around the strangely terrible beauty of life. In the first story I read, it was about a Middle Eastern man who was visited by the Archangel Gabriel, who took him to some holy sites, but the man requested that instead he take him to his son in Miami, whom he hadn't seen for 3 years. So the Archangel takes him to his son. He spends an evening with him, marveling at how different his child is in this different setting and what a different life he has. And at the end of his visit, he asks his son to call his mother because that would make her happy, and then the story ends. The next story was about a street lamp who fell in love with a man. Every time the man walked past, the street lamp would light up only for them. And then one day the man stops coming and the street lamp is heartbroken. So far, the stories are very quiet and sweet and touching and tender. There's obviously a bit of the magical in them and I'm enjoying them. It's nothing amazing. So far it's just feeling like a 3.25, but I think I'll read at least another 2 stories before I decide whether or not I will read the whole thing. Today I am going to the Latin Summer Festival, which is a festival they hold in summer in Melbourne in the park. So it's just a lot of Latin music and food trucks, and I'm guessing a lot of people. So I thought I'd go and pop in, and I might also go to a gallery in the city because they're fairly close by, but we'll see where my adventure takes me. Okay, so with Jewel Box, I did end up reading 50% of these stories, and it was just still feeling mildly pleasant. There wasn't anything bad, but there wasn't anything great. And I had a feeling that if I kept persisting, it would just end up being a 3.25 star. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to rate it that way, you know, so I'll leave it to the people who were really being struck by the writing or the stories. But for me, it was just like, oh, that's lovely. Oh, yeah. So I put that aside, DNF that for now. And I then picked up 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater. I was in bed and I thought, let me just get something that I'm sure will be decent. This was 3.5 stars for me, so it's probably my least favorite of Olivia Atwater's novels that I've read thus far, but still 3.5, still a good time. This story you have, the FMC is a maid named Effie, and she is working for this family, and one of the sons returns home and she becomes absolutely besotted with him. He does this just one simple act of taking off his muddy shoes at the door, and she's like, wow, he cares. Really, he's pretty much doing the least, but she's like, that's more than I've ever seen any of these other arrogant rich pricks do. So what a great man he is. And he actually looked me in my eye and asked me for my name. So she falls in love pretty much. And what happens is a fairy comes to visit one of the balls, and he starts chatting to her, and she's like, do you know that I'm the maid, sir? And he's like, oh, of course you are. So the Fae in this are very, I guess, childlike in their curiosity and their knowledge of the human world. They don't really know how it works. And this Fae is trying to become more human. He's very eager to become a virtuous man, pretty much. And so he strikes up a bit of a bargain with her that he will help her marry the man she loves, this Lord's son. And in return, through the process, he will learn to be more human. But if she doesn't get the person she loves to marry her by 101 days or whatever it is, she will become his maid and work for him in fairy. In the meantime, though, the payment that she has to make for possibly getting her wish come true is that she has to give him a embroidery stitch on a piece of his clothing for every day that she spends as a lady. So in the end, it ends up being 10,000 stitches. So she does the stitches, and her stitching is remarkable and magical in its own way. I won't reveal how, but naturally you can guess that the intended love interest most likely is not the love interest in the end. It's very sweet. It just lacked, I don't know, a little bit, just lacked something. This one is the most chaste by far out of all of the books I read. Like, there is nothing. There is nothing. So I think maybe that might have played a part, that there was very little flirtation, and I just love the angst and the tension, and I guess I just didn't have that. So it was just still a very sweet, whimsical, magical, charming book that mostly spoke about the class gap, you know, between the lords and ladies and their servants, and, you know, a lot of the workers in the end ended up kind of revolting and saying, we need to be treated better, we need more of a living wage. And that was that very class war thing going on in this one. But yeah, it was still a lovely time. 3.5 stars, just wasn't quite hitting the exact spot for me. So the next book that I think I'm going to pick up, I'm going very random. I decided I want to shake things up, read something I wouldn't normally read. I do always like to push myself out of my comfort zone when it comes to reading, because sometimes you can get really surprised and find something that resonates and you love, but at the very least, you've seen a different perspective, you've broadened your mind in some way. So I have seen this doing the rounds, and it is a risk because it's considered a dark romance, but not because the couple themselves are abusive. It's called the Mindfuck series, and the first one I think is called The Risk. This went viral on booktube. Everybody was raving about it. And basically the premise of this one is you've got an FMC who's a serial killer. So she was, I believe, SA'd and is then going around and murdering the men who assaulted her in that way. And she ends up dating this FBI agent who's in charge of her murders. So he's trying to find the culprit, which is her. And she's helping. So that's like the twist in that, you know, basically Clarice is dating Hannibal Lecter. In this case, the FMC, I feel it's a sort of good for her you know, serial killer thing where it's like she's getting justice for what was done to her. So I'll see how it goes, but people, yes, do rave about it. Another book that I've added to my list, once again, of something I'm not sure about, is Manacled. So this is a Harry Potter fanfic between Hermione and Draco, and it's set in the future, and it's a very bleak, grim world where pretty much Voldemort won, okay? But everyone is absolutely going bonkers for it. I have had friend after friend read it and say like, wow, this was phenomenal, really depressing and full on and brutal, but amazing. And I'm like, is it? So I have to know what everyone's raving about. Once again, it's a dark romance. It's an abusive kind of story. I might leave it until I've read some fluffier, more wholesome, joyous books, and then just give it a look-see. But yeah, I know, like coming off that other Siren book, which was, yeah, pedophilia packed, I'm surprised that I'm going back again to more of the grittier, darker novels. But once again, I'm limited to what my library has in, and also just trying to figure out like what should I read and can I find it? It's hard. So sometimes when I just see something there, I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. I just grab it, you know, and it's a case with the Mindfuck series, and it's a case with the Manacled. It's available. I'm like, oh, I've heard about that. I'll give it a go. But yes, I will sandwich them in between lots of happy, joyous, you know, more lighthearted books, I guess, hopefully, so I don't weigh my soul down with this fictional darkness. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting vlog this week. I'm going to be reading outside of my comfort zone and then buffering it with things that are more cozy and warm. But today I'm off to my rheumatologist appointment, and then I'm hoping to hit up some kind of French cafe in the city. Fingers crossed. I'll see you guys when I return. I'm back from the cafe, and it was really lovely, like quality food, beautiful setting and ambiance. So it was very nice. My appointment went well. I've got to do more tests before I get treatment, but I did manage to read half of Risk. I think it's called the first one. I don't think people are coming there for the writing. It's very much a popcorn book in that it's very easy to consume and get through it, but it doesn't nourish you. There's no real substance there. It's definitely not a slow burn book. These two are just straight into it. It's like this book has cut out all of the extra information and just gone, let's get straight and just into plot and the action bits. Let's just jump right in. It's like the action film of the literature world. So it's very also dialogue heavy. Look, it's not my style. It's only 100 and something pages because it's very short. So I'm going to finish it just to see how it goes. Do I believe she's justified in killing all these men? Yes. Do I like being in her point of view? No, I don't. Is the romance doing anything for me? No, it's not. It's not. The guy's very cocky and very like alpha male. So yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but it's only 100 pages, so I may as well just finish it. But it's looking like it's going to be a 3-star book, unless something like really amazing happens. I don't think so. It's looking that way, but I'm happy just to finish it off today and then start something else. I think the next thing I'm going to read is The Ever King. I don't know why, but I've decided just to go through all the dark romances that my library had, and that's what I'm doing. It's a fantasy dark romance, that one. So I know I could just be torturing myself, but I'm in a risk-taking mood this week. Okay, so I did finish The Risk, and there is no preamble with this one. It just gets down to business and is very incredibly fast-paced. It's very easy to read. I can understand why people really enjoy it. It's a fast thrill ride, but for me, it has no substance. There's no grit or emotion. The romance is incredibly rushed. I believe that normally this series is sold as a full set in a book because this was only 100 or so pages, so the individual stories are quite slim. They're more like novellas. I have no desire to continue on with the series. There was just nothing about it that really fascinated me. I've still kept it as a 3 stars because it was just a very quick read. That was The Risk. And that's everything for this week. Until next time, stay wild, Star Child.